With a sore head and a broken heart, we come back, guys. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friend,
Adam. Hey, Rory. I'm sure that sore head will be a distant memory in the near future as we're in very much reflective mood after that final. But how are things in Milan?
Not bad, not bad. Could be better, but not bad. Yeah, woke up today. Obviously, we went to I ever the romantic. I treated my girlfriend to a lovely English football pub in the centre of Milan
Of
yesterday,
course.
and there was a lot of English people. Annoyingly, sorry, American listeners, quite a lot of Americans, but a lot of English people. And yeah, we did end up drinking a little bit too much. And as the game continued, we started to drink a little bit quicker, I think, as we saw what the hell was unfolding in front of us.
Yes.
But yeah, in general, not bad. Just feels weird that it's over, right? It's kind of. I was thinking
Yeah,
back at the tournament. It feels like a lifetime ago it started, and now it's all done.
I know. It feels like it's sealed, and now we're waiting now domestic football again. And yeah, it's strange how quickly, as you just alluded there, how quickly that's gone by, because wasn't that long ago we were kind of having 3 group games per day. We were enjoying it, even though it was at awkward times for the majority of it anyway. But yeah, it's quickly elapsed, and yeah, we've got an answer, haven't we? We know who are the Euro champions now. So in reflection, I think yeah, Spain deserved that title, didn't they? Overall, I think they've been one of the best sides at this Euros competition, and I think it's interesting how that kind of masks a lot of the other nations' maybe underperformance in this tournament as well. So it's good that we were able to reflect on maybe like a positive out of this tournament as well, in the fact that we've seen the rejuvenation of a nation like Spain, where we thought we weren't too sure where they were going, right? But they've proved, even with the kind of players that they've got at their disposals right now, they've got something to build on for the future. So, Rory, it's not all lost. England fans can reflect that they lost to the better side, right? And I think that's the number one thing we can allude to.
This is the consolation, It's like obviously we're going to go into it fully, guys, and we're going to kind of take you down of a breakdown of what's going to happen in the show. But yeah, from very early on, it seemed quite clear that they were by far the best team in the tournament, and it's like, okay, yeah. It was kind of obvious to anyone who watched it, right? But yes, today, of course, in the show, we are going to be looking back at the fantastic scenes last night, if you're a Spain fan, and the more depressing scenes if you're an England fan. And we will try to keep the tone upbeat, but we can't promise that. And then, of course, we'll be looking back at this incredible tournament. We'll be looking back at our favorite moments, the best goals, the best teams, the best managers, all the best things of this tournament. And then me and Adam will be sharing our teams of the tournament with one player from each nation. So yeah, lots to get into, lots to go through. So let's start, I suppose, and let's go with, in case you missed it, Spain 2, England 1, and Spain become the first team to win the European Championship 4 times. The stat that absolutely blew my mind was that Alaves are the last Spain team to reach a final in Europe and lose. This is now 27 finals across Champions League, Europa League, Conference League, European Championships, where the Spanish team has gone and they have won. Like, it is insane, the culture that they have built. When you think, like, the fact that Spain were kind of like England, they were the constant underperformers, the squad that always had talent but never really got that far, couldn't get past quarterfinals, got to the odd semi-final, and just the complete culture shift and the absolute just sheer talent that they've brought through, and the joined up thinking of this system, and the fact that they've won everything with tiki-taka, and now they're playing a completely different style of football. It's much more vertical, much more dynamic, really intense pressing for international football, right? And they've got this new idea. They've moved with the times. And this is a team that I think now, for the next World Cup, they're going to be one of the favourites. Like, obviously, because they've won the bloody thing. But you look at the talent in that squad, Lamine Yamal is only 17 years old. Happy birthday, Lamine. What a bloody birthday that is. Like,
Yeah.
but the talent in this squad and the age profile, like this is a team that I think could genuinely go on and win quite a few things and really challenge for things like the World Cup in America, right? But yeah, I just wanted to give all the flowers to Spain, really, because if we talk about them first, then we'll do England, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
As I said, from the beginning of the tournament, it was very clear that they were the best team. I think Germany were the only other team that showed flashes where they looked like maybe they can challenge them, right? And we said when it was the quarterfinal, like maybe this should be the final. Like these are the two teams that are standing out.
Yeah.
But they've just their style, not only like the results, obviously winning every single game, but the style that they've done it with. And it felt very much like a club team, right? The cohesion and the relationship between the players was something that, from an England point of view, we definitely did not see, right? So it's just really impressive to see their team performances, right?
Definitely. We alluded to a lot of this in the previous episode, how De La Fuente has managed to mold this group of players into a team that fights for each other, maybe not individually like the most blessed, talented squads. However, you can see that they have a togetherness. They work together. They know their systems in that respect. You could see it by the kind of double pivots at times that they were kind of producing during the match. It was interesting for me, I felt in the first half in particular, how the likes of Cucurella and Carvajal kind of tucked into the middle of the midfield, into attacking midfield, allowing Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams to be the kind of sole wingers at some points. Almost, you could have almost alluded to them as wing backs, the way they were playing it at times, because they were so kind of dominating, as you allude to, in that middle press as well as the tempo. And what you saw was the likes of Rodri and Fabian Ruiz, for example, stepping back into the kind of defensive aspects. But they were ensuring that with the likes of Lemont, such as Laporte as well, that they were keeping the press in terms of the passing. And that's the kind of learnings I suppose England can take, is that is the aspiration that you need to get to, is that, you know, that's how you control a football match. That is how you go about it. Now, I'm not going to say it's straightforward, because that is something that takes time to build. However, obviously, with this group of players that England have and the abilities that they've all got and possess, there's potential to do that. But I think, Rory, it all goes and stems to the Spanish system, as you alluded to, that they are ingrained at a very young age how to kind of play this style of football. And it's important that there is a vision. Now, what obviously England have done really well is that we've got this abundance of talent coming through, which is great. That shows you that grassroots wise, it's starting to kick on, right? The next bit is, how do you implement it so that it's followed across the board, so that when a player does manage to step up in terms of their abilities and reach that kind of capability of representing in the national squad, that it feels natural. That's the element, I suppose, that England need to aspire. And I think that's the element I don't necessarily see yet, that we don't have that kind of controlling or understanding of how to control a ball. And I think that's the big learning from this final, is how even when Spain went, or when England equalized, should I say, Spain still managed to regain their composure and ensure that they carried on. So they didn't get kind of swayed by the fact that they went a goal behind. They ensured that they pressed it. And I think that's the most impressive thing that I can kind of compliment to the Spanish side, is that, you know, despite us probably reflecting maybe attacking wise that they're probably slightly sharper than the English side, I think what they did very well was they didn't lose their kind of focus. And that was the most important thing. And we have to remember, Rodri wasn't even there for that second half.
Yeah.
So despite that, they had someone like Zubamendi step up into that role. And I think that was a trigger for the second half. We'll allude to it, but praise to Spain in the way that they did it.
No, exactly. And I think there's many different parts there, like Zubamendi coming in for Rodri, and like I'll talk about how that affected England, or how I think it affected England shortly. But I think him stepping in seamlessly and just performing the same role, the same job, the same task perfectly, like sums up kind of how that squad is, or how the system is built. Because even a player like Cucurella, right? We have seen him at Brighton and at Chelsea, right? Mainly at Chelsea, he's been utterly terrible, right? Now, Chelsea are a basket case. Nothing really works there at the moment, but he's been terrible. He's keeping a left back out of the side, Alex Grimaldo, who's lost one game all season, right?
Yeah.
If he was if that was an English squad with the English media, they would be doing everything in their power to shoehorn that player into the team, right? But they've turned around and gone, no, for this system, Mark Cucurella is the better player for this system, right?
Yeah.
He does that role better. And not only that, they've managed to actually coach him into a functional fucking defender. Like, he looked completely competent. He's a threat on the attack, which he always was. For me, my doubts about him have always been his discipline. And I mean that in terms of his positional discipline and his discipline and his defensive side. But things like that, it's like the Alf Ramsey quote. You don't pick your 11 best players, you pick your best team. And I think Spain did that really well, but also have the ability to bring on Oyarzabal or Zubimendi or whoever, and these players know their roles. And I think this is something that takes a long time. Now, with the thing you said about the confidence, like, you know, they always, even when England did equalise, okay, there was a few minutes where they rocked a little bit, and I think England should have taken advantage a bit more. I think there's a state of mind that comes with when you know your team has won something. Like, I think there is still a huge mountain for England to get over, right? Is this like finally winning something, right? And even though in this Spain squad, there's probably, is there even one player who was part of that incredible team in 2010, 2012? I don't think there is, right?
No.
But there's that culture and that belief around the team, around this is the Spanish national team, this is what we do. When we're in this situation, I think it just gives you that extra 0.5%, that extra percent that just means, no, we don't have to panic. We've all, even though we haven't been here, we've been here before, right? And I think there's just that slightly psychological thing. Whereas with England, obviously everything is narrative driven around 1966 and, you know, it's 60 frigging years or however long it is now. Like, it's just this huge mountain. And I think you could see there that, like, the psychological side really, really helped Spain, and just having that, like, oh, we've done this. Like, we've won 2 of these, and I watched us win these 2 or whatever it is. If you know what I mean, like, there's just a little bit of belief. But I didn't want to take anything away from, La Fuente. Like, I really wasn't sure what to make of him when he came in. I thought it was going to be difficult for him, like, coming from the youth teams and, you know, first big tournament. But absolutely just seamless. I think he is kind of Spain's Gareth Southgate. He wasn't the glamorous appointment. He was the guy who worked through the system, and he was, you know, someone who just is functional, a very good coach, clearly, and very good with the squad. But just a functional appointment of this guy. Knows he's not going to, he's going to be good in the media. He's not going to upset anyone. He's going to get a good squad harmony, and he's tactically, obviously, very good. But let's talk about some players for Spain, I suppose, some of the standout players. I have to just start with Fabian Ruiz again. We could not close him down. Every time he got the ball and he was fizzing a pass in, I was like, one of their goals is going to start through him. If we don't just hit him quicker and close him down quicker. And I was looking at, like, being a nerd, I was looking at the passes per defensive action. Now, Spain's was 8. So basically, they allowed England to have 8 passes before they won the ball back, right? Whereas England's was 18, right? So we're allowing them to have the ball much more. And when you've got a player like Fabian Ruiz alongside Rodri with all that time, they're going to cause you problems. And I think Spain's press also was fantastic. The entire game, I just thought they cannot continue this. Especially the second half, they got the win because they scored the early goal. But even in the first half, they just weren't giving us time on the ball, Like, we played very well first half in what we were trying to achieve. But I just thought, that midfield and Fabian Ruiz in particular really stood out for me. I really have fallen in love with him. Listeners will be more than aware of that by now, I think. Or re-fallen in love with him, because we all loved him at Napoli as well. And of course, Dani Olmo as well. Like, a guy who wasn't even meant to start. He wasn't meant to be in the starting 11, right? He comes in to replace Pedri, and he's going to go to Man City. He's going to get, Player of the Year in 3 years' time or whatever. The guy is ridiculous. Like, he's just unbelievable. How impressed have you been by Dani Olmo? Because I think we've seen him in the Champions League in Leipzig and a few flashes, but I wasn't familiar with his game, honestly. The guy's unbelievable.
Yeah, I've been impressed beforehand when he's been playing for Leipzig, as well as you mentioned in the Champions League matches. And I've always felt that he's one of those players that is waiting to be gambled on by a bigger club because, it is just literally going to happen at some stage. Leipzig did some fantastic bit of business to bring him to Leipzig as part of that setup. He's developed his game. I think he's probably got stronger because I remember when he first came, he was kind of maybe a bit lanky, or he wasn't maybe as strong, and you saw even in that challenge against Declan Rice, that he's good at putting himself about as well, and that was quite a high challenge that he did, but he was the guy that had the highest XG yesterday, Rory, in terms of goal opportunities. So that shows you how much of a threat he has in terms of his game, his general output as well. And it is that kind of technical aspect that he's so good at, but he's also able to kind of just turn his marker. He's allowed, or he can just make it happen in that instance. And I don't feel England did enough to kind of counteract that at times. They let it happen. And, that's credit to him as well, because, it's one thing being able to turn your man, but it's then to do something with it. And I think that's the element that you have to say and praise Dani Olmo's game. And we saw it in the last game anyway, in the semi-finals, how he was able to do that intricate move against the French where he scores that second as well. That was beautifully well taken, but that's all down to him. That is all that he's been doing at this tournament, is he's been creating these little pockets of brilliance that we will say. And Fabian Ruiz, again, he's another player that we've loved because of the way he kind of glides with the ball at times. I noticed a few times he was doing exactly what I said, which is when Marc Cucurella goes forward, he steps back into that defensive duty aspect, so it makes him covered. Again, that's an element that maybe England have got to develop, is how do they rotate those players when they can see one goes forward? Because I remember there was an instance when Johnny Stones goes forward because no one else was kind of doing anything with it. But in that very moment, all we could see was maybe Declan Rice dropping back, but no one else was kind of covering his run. So I do feel that's the other element that England have got to mature at, is how do they fill in for those opportunities as well. But yeah, I mean, brilliant. I think, we could talk about a number of players. I think Unai Simon, even though I think he's flappable at times, again, had another strong game. Even in that last instance when there was a corner from England, I thought he did quite well in those circumstances. Carvajal for the shithousery. I mean, he is just... that meme is going to be there for years, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of superlatives. For me, though, I would say Fabian Ruiz is incredible. As a player, he's dominated this tournament, and I won't spoil it, but people might guess who I think is the player of this tournament already.
I think we might be in agreement then. But we also haven't talked about the two headline acts, really, in Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams as well. Like, these two players, and obviously Nico Williams looks relatively old now at 21 because the other guy on the wing is making him look old. But both of these players, now obviously, the whole time I was like, one of them are going to score against England. Which one's it going to be? One of them is going to score. We just need to decide which one it's going to be. Obviously, Nico Williams' story is just incredible. Like, his family story, it's so inspiring. The whole thing is just like a really beautiful story throughout the tournament. Obviously, having a breakout season and a breakout tournament as well. Looks like he'll be going to, I think it's Barcelona, so they could have Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams this reunited within the Liga quite quickly. But yeah, two incredible performances again. I think in the first half, if we kind of slowly maybe start mentioning England, I was really, really impressed with Luke Shaw and the job he did do on Lamine Yamal. I thought he was just absolutely fantastic. He really offered us a lot of defensive solidity. He tried to get forward when he could. A lot of his cross-field passes to Saka were fantastic as well. He was finding him, just like picking him out across the pitch and just shifting that really quickly. Really impressed with Luke Shaw's performance. And I just think it was good to see him kind of looking at Yamal and being like, no, you're not getting anything out of me, mate. Like, I don't care if you're a teenager, I'll kick you. If you know what I mean? I just think it was really good to see, but still overall a very good performance from Yamal. Like, he was still a threat, especially again coming into the second half. Him and Nico Williams were just, as we predicted, as everyone predicted, were causing us lots of problems, right?
Definitely. Possibly you could argue that Luke Shaw did a great job in that first half, which is why we saw a quieter side of Lamine Yamal. I think he was put off at times. I think there was an incident in the 41st minute where he's trying to get the ball. He thinks he's done the best or got the best out of Luke Shaw, and he's about to cross it, but Luke Shaw gets their foot to stop it and from going for a corner. And you can see he's visibly like, bloody hell, that's been a tough encounter for me. You know, I've not been able to get the better out or best of Luke Shaw. But inevitably, he was the one that helped set up the first one. That's all it is. It is moments. And if you don't concentrate, unfortunately, he has got that ability where he can switch it on. And there's kind of similar vibes to him about like a Messi. When Messi first came into like the breakthrough at Barcelona, you can see those little moments where he can just dribble and make something happen. And unfortunately, even in this match, on the 80th minute, he almost made it another goal for Spain, if you remember. But Pickford has to make that fantastic save prior to the Oyarzabal goal itself. But yeah, I mean, superlatives again in this match. I mean, in particular, that second half, you could see England were physically drained. I think they just run out of gas in terms of controlling him and Nico Williams. They were the huge threats during the whole course of the game.
Yeah, it's also in his role in the goal is like I've seen a lot of wingers and young wingers in that position who just take a shot from there, who are just like, they kind of get a rush of blood to the head. They see their names in headlights and they just take the shot. But he doesn't. He is so mature and so intelligent on the football pitch that he goes, no, this isn't the best option. There's a guy here. I can play him in, and then we go, right? And it's just like a tiny little thing like that. Like, how many times have we seen, not to just, I don't know, pick a name, but like Raheem Sterling or Saka or Ronaldo or whoever. Yeah, in like Ronaldo, just get the ball and just spam it and be like, I can see the goal, shoot. And I just think it showed the real maturity in his and intelligence in his play there.
Yes,
just sheer the levels like guys producing, and he's still got 15, 20 years in the game. If you know what I mean, it's incredible what he's going to achieve. But yeah, unbelievable. So yeah, congratulations, Spain. Genuinely, like the best team absolutely won. Like 100%. There's no way that anybody can argue otherwise. And it kind of makes it feel a little bit better, I think, than when we lost to Italy in 2021. I feel like we weren't a million miles away from them, and we could have really got it. And like on a different day, different conditions, whatever, we win that game. Yesterday, as much as when we scored, I thought, maybe there's a little trickier. I never really truly believed that we'd win. And like when I was talking to people around the bar, they were like, "How optimistic are you?" I was like, "I'm really just hopeful. I'm not in any level thinking we're going to get anything here because they've just been so much better than us across the tournament. We have our own issues and we've got here. Hey, fantastic. Yes, we're in the final, but it was kind of a free hit for the England players because nobody really expected it. So it makes it a little bit easier. This one doesn't hurt as much. And not only because I live in Italy and that definitely fucking hurt, but this one definitely doesn't hurt as much as the Italy loss for me. But let's kind of leave Spain there for now, I think. Say congratulations. And we'll have a sangria for you at some point when I'm emotionally ready. But let's talk about England. Let's get depressed. Let's go. Let's talk about England. So, first half, for me, very, very good. Obviously, nothing happened. There wasn't a shot on target. I think the only events were 2 yellow cards, right? Like, nothing happened. But for what England were trying to achieve and for a team who aren't as good going up against a good team, that is a defensive close to masterclass, I'm going to say, in the first half, right? Where we really just got everything right. The bit where we fucked it was obviously conceding so early in the second half. Now, I think partly I'm going to kind of circle back round to when Rodri went off, right? And I think even a lot of like the punditry I've seen since, there was a lot of like, oh, Rodri's off, here we go. And it kind of like you could feel that almost on the pitch where the players went, oh, Rodri's off. Okay, we can kind of, we don't have to we don't have to step up quite as much. We don't have to be quite as on it. We don't have to follow that guy around the pitch. But then Zubimendi comes on and does exactly the same job to the perfect level, but with more pace than Rodri, and just seamlessly fits in, right? And I think that slight little drop-off just made the whole system fall apart. And then obviously Spain scoring so quickly, then you've got to go from reverse gear into fifth, and it's really fucking hard to do, right? And I think if we'd have I think if we'd gone like 10 more minutes without conceding, we could have really stepped into the game and seen kind of maybe by that point Harry Kane comes off, because we were basically playing with 10 men, but maybe by that point Harry Kane comes off and then Watkins comes on. It's 0-0. It's a completely different game. I just think, obviously, it's a completely different game. Goals are the thing that win them. But I just think conceding so early just really made it all fall apart. And it's really, really frustrating. It was like, 2 minutes into the second half? It was really quick.
Less than that. It was very quick. It was from the kickoff straight away. As you allude to, there was kind of that air of, oh my God, Rodri's off the pitch. We can breathe. We can relax. And unfortunately, I think they said it was about 7 passes that created that goal from kickoff. So it was literally Fabian to Zubimendi to Carvajal to Lamine Yamal to Nico Williams. That's how quick it was. Done. And what I think got me, and I don't know if you felt it at the very moment, was the space between the defense and the midfield was so large. And I appreciate when you're in that position where it's the kickoff, your attacking players naturally, as well as your midfield, push up to where the ball is. But the space that was kind of afforded because the kind of defense moved to the left. So literally everyone, including Kyle Walker, moved to that side, which meant inevitably when Nico Williams is there hanging about, no one was marking him. No one was tracking back, which was remarkable. At first I said, where's Saka? That was my first response when that went in. And unfortunately, all I could see was him in distance kind of tracking back, but he was nowhere to be seen, unfortunately. And that was what I think it's that maturity that we're alluding to, is that what England lacks at that very moment is that, yes, it could have been Alvaro Morata, or it could have been Lamine Yamal that came off. But when you're in that position, you shouldn't be kind of conceding and thinking, right, we've got an opportunity now to win this. You stick to your formation, you stick to your play. And I think what baffled me is how quickly that came apart. Because thereafter, this is the thing, Rory, they were constant, they were persistent. Spain were persistent they weren't comfortable with just one. They made sure that the pressure was And for me, what was telling was how narrow England became. They became so compact that allowed Lamine Yamal, as well as Nico Williams, as well as the kind of fullbacks that we refer to, Cucurella, Carvajal, to push on, which was the kind of suffocation for England at times. They didn't know what to do. So as soon as they, like you said, 18 passes, you said, that Spain had to do before England got an interception or broke through, all they were doing was kicking it long. And it came to a Spanish defender that was able to recycle it and play around. And that was the frustrating bit about how they approached it. And it took, for me, far too long for Gareth Southgate to realise that this wasn't working. Like, for me, yes, Kane needed to come off. Cole Palmer, that was a bold choice. And but in the moments of the game, I felt that he reacted far too slowly again. And this was all down to the fact that he wasn't kind of making sure that his impact was being felt on the pitch. I don't like there's this argument that I've heard since is like, who's responsible for that second half performance? Is it the players or is it the manager? I think there's a combination of both.
Yeah, I think it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. But these are all problems that we've seen throughout the tournament. Conceding at the back post through Kyle Walker not picking up his man happened against Switzerland, right? The gap between the midfield and the defense and someone running through happened against Netherlands, and we conceded the goal. Not reacting quick enough and affecting games has happened the entire way through the tournament. Like, all of these issues we've seen throughout the tournament. And this is why in the previous episode we said, look, even though we've got to the final, all of the criticism is still completely valid. right? All of these points still remain, right? It's an incredible achievement. We'll talk about Gareth Southgate, but like all of that criticism is still completely valid. And it was just frustrating seeing the same mistakes again and being like, okay, this is a systematic issue. This isn't like a lapse of concentration. This isn't these are repeated patterns that we're seeing happening, right? Like Kyle Walker, again, and you're probably like, you're right, Saka should be there as well, like picking up his man and sprinting to get back. But Kyle Walker has lost his man numerous times on that back post throughout this tournament. And the gap between the midfield and defence has been there for everyone to see. And I think, without sounding like I'm defending Declan Rice too much, he has to do it all on his own in that midfield. Like, we can't, like, Mainu has had a fantastic tournament, right? He's had some really good performances, but having a one-man defensive midfield just doesn't work. He can't do it all, right? We need, and I think you made a good point when you were like, obviously, it was a kind of hypothetical, would you play Wharton in the final? I said, no, I wouldn't just drop him in. But in a perfect world, we would have had Wharton in one of the games in the group games to see if that works, right? To see if he's the partner. Because I think I've seen a lot of takes today about how terrible Declan Rice has been. And it has annoyed me because I think he's been one of England's better players. But he's also he's having to do everything. We need to find the partner for him. Because you take him out of that team and see what happens to that England team, right? Take him out and see what happens, right? People were saying pre-tournament, the most important players for England are Kane and Rice, right? If you lose one of them, they're impossible to replace, right? So I think that whole midfield issue needs looking at. And maybe Wharton now with the qualifiers, he gets more time, he gets more, and maybe he turns into the player that we need. But I don't want to throw Mainu under the bus either because I think he's a really good player. I just don't think he does that defensive side. No. That's just not part of his game.
That's not part of his game, and he'll work.
And it's not his fault. It's not his fault
exactly.
that it's not. If you know what I mean.
It's not. No, he works himself to the ground as well. You saw how knackered he was. I was going to pose an interesting question. You know, and do you recall when Gareth Southgate said, "We don't have a Calvin Phillips"? This is like the element I've tried to rejig my memory. It was in the last Euros. Obviously, Declan Rice was alongside Calvin Phillips. I don't recall that midfield being overturned as much as perhaps they were this time round. And
absolutely,
whilst I'm not saying this is an argument because I think Calvin Phillips's form has been pretty poor and he didn't really stand a chance in my eyes, but it is that kind of combating kind of thoughts that Southgate thought this was the thing. Now, what I suppose the question mark will be, and the sense of regret maybe on his side, is that he didn't pick him. He didn't, when he had his trusted generals, he has certain players that he trusts. Go on.
I think, because obviously the clickbait for that headline, everyone was like, oh, yeah, it's not so about Calvin Phillips. Yeah. And I was like, look, I tried to come out in defense and go, yes, it's a stupid thing to say because you're just asking people to absolutely roast you. But he's clearly not talking about Calvin Phillips at West Ham. He's talking about Calvin Phillips at Euro 2020 when he was outstanding, right? The tournament that got him a move to Man City, right? He's talking about that Calvin Phillips, right? We don't have that player. He's right. We don't, because Calvin Phillips has gone crap, right? We don't have that player anymore. And that is an issue. So I don't think it was the right message, but conveyed in a completely wrong way, which is kind of odd for Gareth Southgate, because usually he's very good in the media. He's very good at expressing himself and getting his message across. I think he's like very good at all that. I think it was just a bit of a clumsy way to say it. And you're asking people to make memes and jump on it. And now it's like, Paddy Power doing videos about it and stuff. And you're like, you're kind of asking for that with that comment. But I think the sentiment behind it was absolutely right. We don't have that kind of player now, and we're looking at a player like Mainu or Wharton that are that are hopefully going to become that player, or hopefully going to perform that role. I think I see it more with Wharton than I do with Mainu. To be honest, I think Mainu would probably a little bit more advanced, or in a three, just with less defensive responsibility, allow him to play those incredible passes and get himself space and make the runs that he does. I think maybe Wharton is that more of a defensive minded midfielder, and maybe he does it. But I think the comments were obviously stupid, but I'm in his defense, I think he's probably right. But let's focus on, well, I don't know, England and everything, I suppose. But in the second half, obviously conceding so quickly is not a good thing. But we did manage to get into the game. We did the same thing we've seen every game this tournament. We didn't start playing until we conceded, and then all of a sudden everybody turns up, which is really frustrating. But Cole Palmer gets an incredible goal, really well taken goal. Nice bit of play from England, actually a transitional goal. We talked about in the previous pod how, the counterattacks are going to have to be really punchy. They're going to have to be really and obviously they weren't at all, but that was one that was a really nice moment. I really, really enjoyed that goal going in. As I said, I never really thought we were going to get anywhere beyond that, but incredible for the moment for Cole Palmer. Arguably should have played more in the tournament. I think you can now look back and be like, maybe you should have got a bit more of a chance. And this is where my agenda is going to kind of come out a little bit. There's two players I want to talk about that I think we need to have frank discussions about. Phil Foden. I just don't see it. At Man City, he is fantastic. He's got 4 goals for England in 41 games, 42 games. Right? 4 goals.
Yeah.
He's an incredible player. If I have to hear the conversation one more time of how we build the team around him, I'm going to lose my mind. He is by far the least productive attacker that England have, and we're insisting on building a team around him. It makes no sense. Saka is more productive. Bellingham is more productive. Kane is more productive, and he can't even run, right? I just think he is not worth building the entire philosophy around. He's just not producing. Now, not taking anything away from his form at Man City, but clearly he works better under Pep Guardiola than he does at Southgate. Clearly, him being told, get the ball, 2 passes, move, get the ball, 2 passes, move, whatever it is, a very strict and structured role that he plays, that works for him, right? Allowing him to just do what he likes on a pitch, not so much. Now he wasn't England's worst performer last night. He wasn't the most offensive, right? And making me pull my hair out. But it's just this whole tournament is built up, and now it's really pissing me off that I don't know why people are still insisting that we have to build the team around him, and his PR is insane. People are still just like, oh yeah, Phil Foden, no, he's England's best player. Not from what I've seen for the past 4 years.
No, I think there is this narrative that somehow he's a Paul Gascoigne-esque player that can create moments, right? Unfortunately, I'm much like yourself. I wouldn't have been afraid to have taken him off or not started him in certain matches during this tournament. However, this is all down to Gareth Southgate's philosophy. He trusts him. He knows that he can do something. I think it's more a question mark around Southgate, and I know we'll allude to that later. But I think it is more that he forced this formation. He made the issues, which meant that Foden didn't know how to play it. When you've got someone like him and Jude Bellingham playing a very similar style of role, and they're trying to create opportunities, you can see there was no kind of collaboration. There was no kind of understanding. And something you alluded to is that these managers, coaches, they don't have time with these guys when it comes to the normal season, let alone a tournament. But there was no kind of thought out process with how this formation and how this set of players were going to play with each other, which is why in the group stages we didn't have a balance across the squad. It was during the whole tournament, England's kind of progress to the final has been made up of moments. It's not been made of how they played together. When you compare and contrast that to the Spanish, there's a completely different philosophy going on there. They have thought how they're going to play. They know how they're going to approach each game. And I think that's the difference between how players like Foden, and I'm going to say as well, I think Jude Bellingham had a terrible game yesterday. I personally
he didn't have a great tournament. He did not have a great tournament.
He had moments, and that was it. I felt his attitude towards the end was interesting as well, because
it depends on what camera angle you've seen. Some of it shows him in a good light, some of it shows you in a bad light as well.
Yeah.
Him storming it off at one point and kicking like the ice cool box and stuff like that, I felt was quite interesting about his character, but that's not in a negative light. This is just to show he's quite young. He's still developing. He's still developing his game. And I think that's what's forgotten about the whole contrast of Jude Bellingham, is that as much as we call him the superstar that he's going to elevate England, there's still that kind of immaturity about him. That, you know, he felt that this was his tournament almost. He felt that this was their moment. And I think he didn't apply himself in the right manner sometimes. And that was during the whole course of it. I
found, just to jump in quickly, I found his really not very, there was moments when he was just, and not even just last night, but in general across the tournament, just trying that Hollywood pass or trying that little flick or trying that and I understand maybe like it's a player, you're not quite in the game and you're trying to get yourself into it. Okay, I'll try this and maybe that'll wake me up, or, you know, and you're trying to get yourself into gear. But there's at times when you just need to keep it simple, right? And you just need to complete that pass, keep the ball moving. And I just think there was moments, I think it might be the Slovenia game, was that the 0-0, where he was just honestly atrocious. I think it was that game where he was just, everything he was trying to do was like too clever. And it's like, I don't know. I don't like how his personality is being painted in the media now, because he's instantly become arrogant and, you know, oh, look at him, he believes the hype. Blah, blah, blah. Like, well, yeah, he's been told since he was 8 years old that he's fantastic, and he is pretty fantastic. Like, you're going to have a bit of an ego, right? People love Zlatan for it. People love Ronaldo for it, right? I don't see why it should be any different with Jude. But that being said, that advert with like "Hey Jude" and whatever did seem a lot like, whoa, this is quite big.
PR.
Like,
PR.
Yeah, but I don't think, I don't know if it's necessarily his fault or his idea or his
whatever.
It
probably isn't. No.
But like, I think the whole thing about England under Southgate has been like the team, right? It's been the collective. It's been the like harmony or whatever. And I felt even and as you said, he's really young, and it was a cool advert, right? I was getting caught up in the hype, and I was like, yeah, fucking come on, we're gonna like win the tournament. But it's somewhere in the back of my head, I was like, this is a lot, right? This is a lot, and it's just a classic English building people up to break them down, right? But I want to say, like, because I don't like how his personality is being painted, and people have switched on him really fucking quickly, which isn't a surprise, I suppose, because social media is horrible and people are horrible in general. But I think, his performances weren't fantastic this tournament. But as we've said, and as this general tone of this episode is, none of the performances were that great for England.
No,
it was all moments, right? But the last player I wanted to talk about as kind of, because I think there's an interesting point here, maybe you be the judge, listener. Harry Kane.
Yep.
I really hope, and I'm not like, it sounds terrible, but I really hope it comes out that he's carrying an injury, right?
Yeah.
Because
100%.
Otherwise the performances are genuinely alarming. There is a conversation to be had. He's had one shot across two finals for England now. I want to say one touch in the box across two finals. Like, he has a knack of disappearing. And I think last night, clearly England's plan was to beat Spain's press by getting the ball up front, like just relentless fucking long balls. But I get it. I get what you're trying to achieve, right? If you try and play out from the back against Spain with that pressing, they're going to kill you, no matter what fucking Mark Goldbridge says, right? So I can understand what the idea was that they were trying to get across, right? But when you don't have Harry Kane winning that ball, it just comes straight back to you. Now, what is Harry Kane's signature move? It's him flipping the defender, trying to break his back and winning a free kick, right? That's kind of what he does, right? Yeah. It's a big part of his game. But he just was not able to do that, and the ball was just coming straight back to us. We were just not retaining possession, and it meant that there's just constant pressure on the midfield and defence. There wasn't that respite, and I think, again, if we go to Southgate and his lack of action, now, he's not going to take Harry Kane off at halftime. He's just not going to. That's too big. Like, it's too big a decision. It's just too big a decision, because if you take Harry Kane off at halftime and we lose 2-1, I think there's genuinely a thing of, well, why did you take your best striker off? Like, so I understand it's a difficult decision to make, but even though Watkins did really well when he came on, I would have been bringing on Tony to perform that role because that's what he does at Brentford. Brentford do it all the time. He wins the ball, he nods it down to someone, and then they break, right? And I feel like he would have performed that Harry Kane role incredibly well. And then you can bring on Watkins from when we needed to, right, against Slovakia. I think you can bring on Watkins as well, but I just think we needed someone to be Harry Kane, and Harry Kane wasn't being Harry Kane. And I think it's interesting and he's still got a good few years in his career, right? He's 32. Harry Kane, 31, 32.
Yeah. 31, 32, yeah.
But at some point, we're going to have to move on from him as a striker. And it's kind of concerning as well where we are in that, because I can't really see anybody like Ollie Watkins had a fantastic moment against Netherlands, had a really good season for Villa. Ivan Toney, again, I think off the field, whatever. I don't know if he can actually be relied upon genuinely. It'll be interesting to see if he gets a big move, if he actually clicks or whatever. But I think, there's an alarming issue with England now with the lack of plan B in attack, I think, because once Harry Kane wasn't performing, the whole thing just fell apart. Like, how did you see it?
Yeah, I think this was one of the questions I was going to pose, is the future of that attacking line. Personally, I've said this for a while. I don't understand why we haven't gone with two up top. Really don't understand the premise of why that hasn't been considered, especially if we can see that the combination of Jude and Foden behind them doesn't work. It hasn't worked all tournament. Why didn't we do it, especially when Tony came in for that Slovakia game where he made those moments happen, right? And it might not be that he had an input in terms of the passes directly, but it was the physical threat. It was the threat of having two up top, which dragged those defenders to make sure they were man marking them. Again, against the Spanish, if we are going to allude to direct style of football, then you couldn't have asked for two of better men in Tony and Kane to possibly disrupt them, get the knockdowns, get those
just keep them busy, keep them busy, make them uncomfortable,
put pressure on them, which is the thing that we're probably alluding to as well, is that during the whole time in that second half, in particular, when England get themselves back into the game, for example, they got the composure, they got the focus. This is the Spanish I'm talking about. They didn't feel like they were being threatened, despite, Ollie Watkins trying to drag out and try and chase down the ball. There was still a huge gap between him and the midfield. And this is the problem. Like, if you're going to follow through with something, you've got to ensure that you work together as a team. And it didn't work. In terms of that future element, I think there is a huge question to be asked here, is that I would anticipate Kane does make it into the next squad, bar any injuries, for example. The question mark is who's coming through, right? I don't know right now who I can put my finger on and say they're going to lead us into the next tournament. I don't see necessarily who's coming through from the under-21 level. I mean, look, there's speculation about Harvey Elliott, for example, potentially most likely to come through, but he's not an attacker. He's not a striker. Does that mean Dominic Solanke then has a chance? Callum Wilson has always been 50-50 with his fitness. I think there's a huge question mark there. And I think you've got to possibly start thinking about, do we start bleeding in that replacement for Kane in, whether that be Ollie Watkins or someone else? Someone needs to kind of start learning the ropes and take that pressure off Kane, because Kane is reminding me of Lewandowski, where there's a reliance on him to do everything, but he can't do it at an international stage. He's getting tired. They're very similar ages in some respects. They're coming into the ends of their careers, so to speak. So there's only a certain amount that they can do. And then there's it feels like an arrogance that Kane has to be on the pitch. What could we do
he's
without
captain, though, isn't he? That's the thing. Like,
this is the argument with Poland as well. What would we do without Lewandowski? And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We're going to have to deal with it. And that's the dilemma with all international sides. But look, with Kane, I think there's a huge question mark now going into the next World Cup to kind of go, do we start bleeding in a player like Ollie Watkins? I think there's an argument to say, yes, we should start thinking about it now going forward.
Well, I honestly, it was painful to watch Kane throughout this tournament. I just felt bad for him. I just felt really bad for him. I think you're giving absolutely everything, and I will never doubt your commitment. Your as a captain, he just seems like a top bloke. The players love him. How 100%. He celebrated with he was genuinely happy for Ollie Watkins. You could see he was delighted for him. Like, he's clearly a good lad and like an incredible player. It was really difficult watching him just clearly injured. And I just think maybe there should have been a word of like, look, we just need to manage this a bit better. And like, because we were playing with 10 men at times last night. It was genuinely brutal. But if we're looking forward to the future, the big question really is the future for Gareth. Now, he said, I fucking hate journalists sometimes, the second the final whistle had gone, it was like, so are you going or are you staying? I was like, fucking hell, lads, give him let him breathe, let him recover a little bit. But it's an interesting question. I get the feeling he's going to go. I've kind of had the feeling that I think if England had won, I think he might have stayed and been like, all right, let's go for the World Cup. But I think this might just be like one bridge too far and just like, you know what? It's time for a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of ideas, a bit of, fresh air and see what happens. But the only issue for me is if we're assuming that Gareth Southgate is leaving, who's next? Because there's only a point in allowing him to leave or him leaving if we have a successor. Now, what I don't want, because I saw the names linked, Pochettino linked.
Yeah, I did see this. Yeah.
I don't want England to do is just start chasing big names again. We've done that. It was crap. Capello was fucking terrible. I can't stand the bloke, right? Like we did that. We've finally done this. Okay, let's try and do what the rest do in this, like, the Project DNA or whatever it was called, right? And kind of bring it. We have to stick with that now. I think we have to see this out and be like, keep this. The level up in England performances under Southgate has been insane. Like, it's genuinely been incredible to watch England under Southgate. Like, the performances we've had, the moments we've had, like the overall tournament performances. But who comes next? The other names I saw were Eddie Howe, who I think would be stupid to take the job at this point. I think he's got a project at Newcastle that could really, really add another couple of zeros if he does become England manager in the future, depending on how well that project goes. And Graham Potter. Now, Graham Potter isn't a manager that I is a manager I like, but we saw at Chelsea, he can't exactly demand respect. Now, obviously, again, Chelsea are an absolute basket case. There's a lot of bad characters in that changing room, but the fact that they were calling him Harry within the first day, it doesn't scream someone who's going to come in and grab hold of a dressing room in the biggest job in the country, arguably one of the biggest jobs in the world, right? No. So it worries me what does happen next. And I think unless there is a clear idea, and maybe it's daft as it sounds, it's Lee Carsley, right? He's been the under-21 manager. A lot of people have been after him. Apparently a very good coach. He knows the players, knows the system, has worked at whatever it's called, the place in Stafford. Can't remember what it's called now.
St. George's Park,
St. George's Park, obvious name. How could I not remember that? But I should have just not patriotic enough. Clearly. But too woke to remember the name. But maybe the only thing that worries me about that is that people would lose their collective mind if Lee Carsley was, because he's not a big enough name, right? But maybe it's something like that. If that's the system, you go, okay, well, he knows this is the way we see it. But I think we have to have a clear succession plan. But I don't trust the FA to have a clear succession plan. So where do we go from here? Who do you think is next if Gareth leaves? Because I don't know if you agree with me. I do think Gareth is going.
Yeah, I'll say on this grounds, I think he's probably had enough. He's done a lot for the nation and he should be commended. But ultimately, as we've pointed out in this pod, it has been moments. His in-game management has been the reason why England probably haven't progressed to the next step. And I feel sorry for Gareth Southgate because I think most people wanted him to win this game. I think they genuinely wanted him to win this game.
Yeah.
However, it's not happened. We can rest assured, though, It's not going to be Czeslaw Mikiewicz. He's already got himself a role, so
Oh,
I can rule him
we
out of
missed
the
it, guys.
equation. You know,
The
that
FA acting too
masterclass.
slowly again.
Exactly. I will put to you two names that I think will offer that in-game management that are available. Both of them are available right now. One of them has already been quoted in a lot of media outlets. The question mark is whether his kind of heart and desire is to take on a role such as this, and that's Jurgen Klopp. That's one of them. I think he would be a massive upgrade on Gareth Southgate.
Yeah.
He understands the players. He could build his squads to a philosophy, a style of football that would get
excited.
England progressing. Yes, exactly. I think this is a very astute person that you could, see him through. He's going to have various annoyances, I can guarantee it. However, I just genuinely think that with the group of players that are available and the ones that are up and coming through, potentially there's an opportunity there as well for Lee Carsley to step up as an assistant manager and help Jurgen Klopp or whoever the next manager be to help him with the understanding of this group of players, which I whilst I understand the credentials of Lee Carsley, they're obviously clearly seeing a career pathway with the under-21s. Coach knows the group of players that are coming through, potentially those under 21s as well as those around him. So there's a clear grasp, understanding that from an FA point of view, that this possibly is a way to progress it. But I personally don't think Lee Carsley is ready for such a role where you've seen the antagonized element of the media against a character like, a Lee Carsley, a Gareth Southgate. I think Gareth Southgate has matured, but ultimately we are going to have possibly very similar conversations about Lee Carsley in terms of if he does something that is against the grain, everyone's on top of him. And we don't know how he could cope in that environment. He's kind of sheltered away from that. He's not had that scrutiny. He's not had the pelters at him. So it'd be another question mark about how does he deal with that? One option, there you go. Second option, again, Thomas Tuchel. Now, this could be a lesser inspiring potential choice out of the two. But again, he's someone that knows the English game. I think he prefers England in general. He said that in the Germany press, that he prefers his spell at Chelsea. I think he's got a good understanding of the youth players and the players that are currently in the squad. What I like about him is he's bold. He will change the game as it goes. If it's going against him, he's a proven winner, much like Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, there is going to be the element with both of these that they're Germans as opposed to potentially English.
There's a big elephant in the room here. Like I'm kind of getting out of the way of it.
Even Pochettino, Argentinian, that's going to piss off people, isn't it?
He would never be able to go home again, right? He would never be able to go home again.
But I think with both of them, you've got someone that is probably, and I think we both agree, that are higher in terms of caliber, higher understanding of the group of players. I think they will demand the better or the best elements of this squad. I just think both of them would suit the England demands right now. And I think both could potentially progress England to winners. And that would be the fascinating scenario, that a German has commandeered an England squad and got them to win a major trophy, which would be fascinating. But
it worked for the women. It worked for the women, right?
Exactly.
Women.
Serena Wiegmann, obviously. But yeah, I just think, look, these are two managers that are available right now. So there's nothing about contracts that are needed to be negotiated apart from the individual personnel. Both of the type of caliber that we need in terms of England progressing. I just think they're an upgrade. They're a pure upgrade on Gareth Southgate.
I like both those names. I just don't know how realistic they are, really. I think Klopp's waiting for another big club job. I can see
possibly.
I can see him at Real fairly soon, I'll be honest. But we can dream. We can dream, right? And Liverpool fans would finally have to support England rather than being performative wankers about not supporting England.
Of course.
Which would be interesting. But that's going to piss a lot of people off. Oh, well. But before we kind of move on, I just wanted to very quickly, because I feel like obviously a lot of negativity about last night and about, the tournament in general and stuff. But I really want to hammer home that I am just so thankful for Gareth Southgate in general and what he's done with the England national team and the performances at the Qatar World Cup. We played attacking, dynamic football then. We were exciting. We didn't win, but we were exciting. We were dynamic. Like, he's adapted to different situations. Like, obviously, that was like mid-season, so it's a bit easier for players to go hell for leather because they're in their peak, right? But, like, I just think in general, we all grew up watching England routinely get knocked out in the group stages, in the round of 16, in the quarterfinals, lose penalty shootouts, want to scratch your eyes out at the 2010 World Cup or not qualifying for 2008 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And we've gone from that to like semi-final, quarterfinal, final, whatever. Like, it is just the level that he's brought of tournament performances is just incredible. And I think he's taken England from what Spain used to be, right? I don't know, there's a million different teams like that. Belgium, right? The team that always kind of like, oh, they look good, but they never actually are.
Sure.
To a team that people before tournaments are saying they have a chance. And honestly, for me, that's kind of, obviously, I would much rather we'd beaten Italy and I'd much rather we'd won last night. But there's enough there for me that I fucking believe in the England team. Like, when I come into a tournament, I'm like, oh, we can do this. We actually are one of the big boys. We're all right. Yeah. We're pretty good, right? And I think I think we just have to be really thankful for him. And like, I think you nailed it when you were like, so many people wanted him to win it. Like, I wanted him to do it because he seems just like the nicest guy. The players love him. And it would have just been, you can see how much it means to him. And like, it just, I'm just really thankful. And I think it's a risk. Obviously, the FA didn't even want him, right? They were desperate to get anyone else. And it's just worked out massively. So they can't even take credit for this, if you know what I mean. It was like, this is a happy accident, right? But I think in general, we just have to be thankful for him, right? And hope that he, well, I don't know, it'll be a couple of weeks before he's on the High Performance podcast with Jake Humphries, I imagine.
Yeah, talking bollocks for sure. But on a genuine point, I think there's potentially there's something about longevity with him and whether he should stick around in some capacity in the FA in terms of maybe overseeing the kind of progression of what we alluded to, which is that kind of evolved vision for the group of players from a youth level upwards. So I think there's a role potentially. Whether he would take it on is another question. Whether he sees himself as a club manager is probably for him, but I think he could do well not to take that on and realize that he's got not a bad role within the FA, and he could be someone that is seen as a visionary within football. So potentially as a background intermediate or something like that, I think he'd be very good at. And maybe take a note, Frank Lampard, Stevie Gerrard. This is maybe something you should have done initially, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, hopefully neither of them get anywhere near the frigging job. Even though Gary Lineker was pushing Frank Lampard, I think Lineker's had a bad tournament. Bloody hell. Even worse than 92. He's had a shocking tournament. But we're going to leave that there, I think. We're just going to say, God, we were so close. But we'll get there eventually. We will get there. I was talking to the England fans, like to some England fans last night, and I was just like, I just want us to win one thing in my lifetime. That's all I want. Just one thing. Just win 1 Euros, 1 World Cup. And then you don't have to win it again. I don't care. I just want to see it once. The last time it happened, my dad was 6. If you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's painful. But
that says it all.
I think in general, despite the fact
Rory, were you there for Le Tournoi?
Well, very true.
You go.
Yes. Well, underrated. And that was the real quiz, right? That was the real quiz.
That is it.
The tournoi. Oh, God, what a banger. Actually, no, I feel better now. Cheers, mate. I feel better.
Right, Poland won that, so there you go.
Have that. There we go. But yeah, on that happy note, there we go, guys. We can go back and watch the tournoi highlights and make ourselves feel better about life. Yeah, we are going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we are going to be looking back at what I insist was a very good tournament, despite what the Twitter virgins say. We will see you on the other side. And we are back, and it's time for the Euro 2024 awards, where we look back at the amazing tournament that was, and we kind of wipe a tear from our eye and just be happy that it. What is it? Don't be sad it's over. Be happy that it happened. Something
it
like
happens.
that. I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I think somebody got it a lot more punchier than I did there. But anyway, something like that. So let's look at the awards that we're going to give. We're going to look at the best team, the best manager, the biggest disappointment, player or team, that could be, I think, player of the tournament, goal of the tournament, and our favorite moment or best moment. And then, of course, me and Adam will be looking at our teams of the tournament, where we can choose one player from each nation. There's already a few I'm not confident about backing, but here we go. Let's do it. So let's start with our team of the tournament. I'm going to share mine. Should we go through mine first?
Go for it.
Now, if I can share the screen, hopefully I can. This one. Seamless. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. So here you can see my team. Now, unsurprisingly, the Georgian player, so for the people who aren't watching, in goal, I have everybody's favorite goalkeeper, and not just for that incredible shot after the win over Portugal, where he looks like a gladiator in battle. But Mamardashvili was hands down goalkeeper of the tournament, right? I think he's a goalkeeper that people have been really excited about at Valencia. There's been a lot of links with him getting a big move. And this is kind of the tournament where he's had that big breakout. And he just, in a team that were very entertaining, he added quite a bit of solidity at times, right? And just pulled off some incredible saves. Also, his distribution was decent, I thought.
Definitely. I think he's been one of those goalkeepers that maybe didn't come into this tournament as a surprise package as such, but what he's actually developed has shown what an incredible talent he is. And I'm surprised there hasn't been more clubs after his services. Rumored that Bayern Munich are trying to do or pull out all the stops to get him in. And they could have got him for a snip in the previous January and summer transfer windows had they been a bit more foresightful with their business. However, that said, it has happened. And look, Valencia on to winner right now. Fantastic performance. He pulled off some amazing saves. And I think we have to also credit that there wasn't too many goalkeepers that I felt were outstanding in this tournament. But I think special word goes to the Turkish goalkeeper as well for that incredible save. Gordon Banks-esque.
What a save. What a save. What a moment that was. Genuinely incredible, that. I have gone for a 4-3-3. Now, my defense, well, here we go. There's a bit of a steady ass spin here, but I've gone for Stefan Posch from Austria. I think there was a few performances where he really stood out for me. Obviously, Austria, another team that kind of really, I don't know if they surprised people, but like really well coached, really, again, quite entertaining, involved in some really good games. And I feel like he just there was a few performances, a few moments where he caught my eye, and I wanted to have an Austrian player in that squad because I think their performances definitely deserved it. My centre-back pairing, the oldest man in the world, Pepe, because alongside N'Golo Kante, I think it was a really good revival for old heads this tournament. There was like, they still got it. They've still got it. Kante was unbelievable. He didn't make it into my team. But Pepe, I feel like in a Portugal team that massively underperformed, defensively in general, they looked pretty solid. And he was a big, big part of that. And I think just in terms of his leadership and purely for the moment where he was keeping up with, was it Mbappe or Yamal? I can't remember. It was, who was the straight? And he was managing to keep up with, I think it was Mbappe, right? And you're like, this guy's 41 and he's still doing it. It's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. So I think he had to be in the team. And with my massive Arsenal hat on, he's partnered by William Saliba. I think, again, France were very, very solid defensively. He was outstanding. And rival fans have gone from, Saliba's overrated to, Saliba's too good for Arsenal. So I think he's had a really popular, really good tournament. and maybe a future Arsenal player in here if Fabrizio Romano's constant tweeting is to be relieved. I've gone for Calafiori because he was the only player for Italy that can walk with his head slightly held high. He can play left back, even though he didn't do that role for Italy. So technically, it's fine. And I just think he was the one player who looked like he gave a shite for Italy. So
sure.
Calafiori. Heading into midfield, I've gone for Marin from Romania, scored some cracking goals. Romania again, another really exciting team. That game against Ukraine alone was fantastic. Really, a game that you expected to be 0-0, and then you're like, holy shit, this is a banger. Absolutely love that game. Thought he was fantastic. I've gone for one of my favorite players to watch in this tournament, Arda Güler, not only for his goals, but his all-round play, just incredibly exciting. I think Yamal has kind of stolen the headlines, obviously, but Arda Güler is someone who really looks like he's going to dominate football for a while. And, of course, my friend and yours, Fabian Ruiz in midfield. I understand that Rodri got player of the tournament, but for me, Fabian Ruiz should have got player of the tournament, I think. Not taking anything away from Rodri, I just think Fabian Ruiz just did everything incredibly well. And he really did stand out in that Spain team. Then my front three, nobody will be surprised. Bukayo Saka's in there because he was England's best player. He was their most threatening player on the attack. So I think he deserves to be in there. And then we have Musiala. Now, Musiala, I was switching between Musiala and Wirtz. This could have been either, really. Yeah. But I think there was a moment early in the tournament where I was like, this guy's going to win. He's going to deliver.
He could win it.
Like, he was just outstanding. Does every facet of the game. Like, defensive work as well is fantastic, as well as his dribbling, his passing. Just all-round incredible player. Really gutted he didn't choose England. I'll never really get over that. And then up front, Cody Gakpo, because, again, really threatening for Netherlands. Got a good few goals. Everything they did kind of came through him. And I think he definitely deserves like a bit of a tip of the hat of like, he had a very good tournament. So I really wanted him in there. And Netherlands, I think, were a decent side to watch, a decent performance from them. For them, I think he was by far their best player. So Cody Gakpo, that is my 11. I'm going to stop sharing, Adam, and I'm going to let you share yours, and you can take us through it.
Let me share my screen then. So just give us a second. And very similar to Rory, we have a very similar personnel lineup. There is a few differences. So fingers crossed it will share shortly. Just waiting for the screen to reflect. But I will, just for those that are listening, I went for a 4-3-3 formation, and we'll start off with goalkeeper. Undeniably, we've both agreed here, Mamardashvili, incredible goalkeeper at this tournament. We'll go from right back to left back. So right back, I've gone for Stefan Posch again. I've been
I didn't think we both have him. Fair play.
I know. We've got a good taste. That's all I can say. Stefan Posch, someone that I appreciate in Bologna. I felt he had a fantastic tournament. Generally, it's a shame that we didn't see more of Austria as the games went on, but they did get kicked out by the Turks. So we have to give credit to the Turks there. But he was phenomenal for the Austrians on that right-hand side. Then I've gone for a centre-back pairing, like yourself, Rory. Pepe, I thought was incredible. I've not been a big fan of Pepe's shithousery down the years. However, what I will do is give credit to someone that at the ripe age of 41, pushing on 80, he still is able to keep up with his defensive duties and keeping up with the pace of the game. I felt sorry for him in particular for that last game that Portugal were knocked out. You could see he was emotional. It meant a lot to him. I suspect this is the last tournament for him. And it's a shame because that performance didn't really mix in with the performance that Portugal displayed on the day. I've gone for Mark Guehi to be his kind of pairing. I felt he's had a fantastic tournament here, very mature. There's been elements where I felt like maybe he was still getting to adapt to the international role. However, he's matured alongside Johnny Stones. I felt he read the game quite well, and if anything, he helped his team out massively during this tournament. He's one of those players that probably doesn't get enough credit during this whole tournament, in particular even yesterday's game. I think he did a sterling job considering the circumstances. Left back is a bit of a funny one, Rory. I'll give you that. But I've gone for Nicola Zalewski. I liked his approach in this tournament in particular. I thought his runs were positive for Poland. He was one of the players that clocked a very fast run in the early group stages. Actually, the amount of dribbles that he did in this tournament were phenomenal as well. So one of the most offensive players at the group stage as well. And he was a player that, unfortunately, I was scrambling around for a left back. And I thought, do you know what? He can do that role anyway. So that's why I've gone for him. We'll move into midfield. Like yourself, I've gone for Fabian Ruiz. But I've gone for a different kind of midfield duo to pair up. We've got N'Golo Kante, who I thought, again, another phenomenal tournament from him. We started to roll back the years with his appreciation, shall we say, and he's been so unlucky, I suppose, that he's been mixed in with Rabiot in that midfield at times.
I was just really happy to see he still had it. I was like, yeah, my guy, he's still great. I was just really happy.
You guess that he's probably still running from Berlin back to France right now or to an airport nearby. But he's still got phenomenal energy about him and an appreciation from fans as well. And then I've gone for Jamal Musiala. So in the midfield trio, instead of being in that front three, Rory, I think he can do that job as well. And as you alluded to, defensively was great, but also offensively, the runs that he could do. Yeah, it was one that I did also comprehend between him and Vert, should I say. And then in the three, interestingly, I've gone for Arda Güler. So again, he's a player that can play in that role. We've talked about how we see him as the future Modric of this Real Madrid squad as well. I think he's such a phenomenal touch on him. Cody Gakpo as well. I agree with you. I think he's had a phenomenal tournament, obviously being the kind of real pinnacle for the Holland side, because outside of Wout Weghorst, he was the most offensively kind of minded player that could contribute in goals. His XG was through the roof as well. And I think he added that bit of quality to this Dutch side. And then on that left-hand side, I've gone for Ruben Vargas, a player that I think has broke through. I think I'm surprised that I haven't seen his name linked with many clubs, but I suspect it will be coming. He only plays for Augsburg, so again, I can't imagine the fee being huge, but I've been really excited about what he brings in terms of the dynamic from that left-hand side. He can cut into the midfield. He can cut into the middle. He's got a lethal shot, as was shown during this tournament as well. Beautiful player, Rory. And that completes my squad, really. So, yeah, I think it's been a beautiful set of squads. I can't really say that either of us have had an iffy one, if I'll be brutally honest.
No, but, I think they're all relatively sensible. I can already hear people saying in my head, like, what the fuck is Saka doing in there? But I think it's just getting in my head for some reason. But yeah, no, I think absolutely. Yeah. And I really like that we both went for Stefan Posch. Great minds think alike, Adam. What can you say?
Definitely.
Yeah, incredible. The only thing is I didn't get a Switzerland player in there, and I feel quite bad about that. But anyway, Switzerland were fantastic. I maybe should have shoehorned in Xhaka. But anyway, there was enough Arsenal players in there, I think. Let's go for the awards. Here we go. So we're going to start with, this one might be quite quick and easy, and it might be summed up in one word. But Adam, best team?
Spain.
Good. Nice. Spain next. There's no real doubt there. No. Best manager, who are you bringing to the table?
So the obvious one, and the one I'm going to put through, is Luis de la Fuente. I think he's been phenomenal. However, I will give a special word for a runner-up in Willy Sagnol for what he's done with the Georgian. Yes. I think he deserves credit. Also, maybe a word for Slovenia for what he's done with Albania. I did tip them to be the outsiders. I know they didn't progress out of this group stage, but again, they gave us moments, Rory. Yeah. So again, credit to him. But Luis de la Fuente overall. What about for you?
Nice. I'm going to go Italian, and I'm going to go for... I'm going to go for Vincenzo Montella. I'm going to go for Spalletti. No, I'm going to go for Montella. I think Turkey were just so much fun. They were so much fun, and they were not even just because I think fun takes away from the job that he did. They were like really offensive. They were really like hardworking, exciting, aggressive, everything. But also like, even if, they conceded a few goals, like technically they're a very gifted team, and he built that team very well. They all knew their jobs, and I think he's like, we talked about him during the tournament, he's really bought into the national team, and he's really like, got the culture. And I think compared to what they did in the last Euros when everybody was tipping them and they were absolutely shite, this one for them to get through and get into the knockout stages and really give it a go, I feel like it's a really big feather in his cap, honestly. And I think maybe he'll be taken a little more seriously as a coach now, because I think the decent job he did at Fiorentina all that time ago feels a long time ago, right? And I think maybe he's been forgotten a bit. So I think Montella has to be, for me, the best manager of this tournament. But I also think, purely for the aesthetic, Murat Yakin at Switzerland, because he looks like the coolest man on the planet, as well as being a very good team, very good performance. He looks like a gangster from the 70s, incredibly cool. Like he should be in Miami somewhere. Like, absolutely love it. But also his Switzerland team were fantastic, so I wanted to give him some credit as well. But I think by definition it probably needs to be the De La Fuente, because he won it, right? But let's go for now. You can interpret this as team, player, match, however you want to interpret it. Your biggest disappointment.
So I went for team here, Rory. I was toying with two. One was Hungary, because I was disappointed by how they approached it. Unfortunately, they I think this is the generation where, unfortunately, it's telling. There is an argument to maybe say the same about Croatia. I think they've been a bit disappointing, but I think they showed towards the latter game that they were pulling it together for one last swan song for the likes of Luka Modric. However, I am going to go with Italy here, Rory. Italy, unfortunately, were the biggest disappointment of this tournament. I think everyone expected them to be at least in the quarterfinal stage. Just the way that they played, they were terrible. We've mentioned it on our various pods, unfortunately, and we dissected how bad, and we've kind of pointed fingers at various different aspects. However, Italy overall, I think, have just the pure winners of this, unfortunately, because they were disappointing. They should have delivered better than they actually did. And one man that potentially could be also a winner of this title is Gianluca Scamacca. I think he disappointed in this tournament and should have delivered more for the Italy team, but more importantly for his career as well, Rory, because there was a lot of hype coming off that season with Atalanta, and unfortunately he failed to deliver. So, for me, Rory, I'm going to stick with Italy.
I think it has to be Italy, really. It by all accounts, it has to be. Yep. I was going to say Belgium, but nobody really expects anything from Belgium anymore, so you can't really be disappointed. I was also, Croatia is a very good shout, but I think hands down, Italy, you are lifting a trophy this summer, and it is the biggest disappointment at Euro 2024. Auguri, congratulations, guys. Very good work. It was terrible. Next, this is going to be summed up in 2 words, maybe. Player of the tournament. We've each said it about 10 times this episode. Fabian Ruiz, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
sealed,
good, nice
done.
And easy. That one was good. Goal of the tournament. Now, a lot of people have complained that maybe the football hasn't been the most exciting, but there has been some incredible goals. So lots to choose from. But Adam, your goal of the tournament?
I'm just going to go with the obvious one, and it might not be obvious for everyone's choices, but Lamine Yamal against France. I think that was phenomenal. Just the technique, the audacity, the control, the way that he manages to get that dip. It's just incredible. It announced himself, although he pretty much announced himself a few games before this. Yeah. I think it announced how good a player he was and how he was able to kind of do it on these kind of occasions and moments. So for me, Lamine Yamal deserves this. Yeah. I'm going to scramble around while we think about it, because there is one other one that I want to call out, and it was in particular the first group game for Romania against Hungary. If we can recall ourselves all the way back, and it was scored by Stanciu.
Stanciu, that's a hell of a goal. Yeah.
What an incredible hit. What a moment it was. But I'm going to save that, because that might be a clue. So I
Okay.
talk about it.
Nice.
But yeah, for me, Lamine Yamal.
Nice. I'm going to go for, obviously, Lamine Yamal is definitely deserving because he embarrassed Rabiot while he did it as well, which is always something we can get on board with. But I'm going to go for Arda Güler against Georgia with an absolute rocket. I just really enjoyed watching him, and that game was chaos. That game was incredible.
It was
a game that like everybody was again like, oh, this is going to be 0-0. It's going to be terrible. Then it was like the game of the tournament, and Güler really like stood out in that game in general. But that goal was just fantastic. So I think that the Hjulmand goal against England was very good. Really nice hit for Denmark. We have to say Christian Eriksen scoring at the Euros. It wasn't the most fantastic, beautiful goal, but as a moment, unbelievable. But I'm going to go for Arda Güler against Georgia because I just thought it was a goal that made me like stand up, like whoa, what was that? Like
that was
incredible. And that's always a lovely thing to see. So let's go for our best moment of the tournament. Now I've already mentioned Christian Eriksen scoring after his story, all of that. We have Ronaldo psychodrama. We have the sax man, right? The German fan with the saxophone. The Dutch fans from left to right. We all enjoyed that. Adam, what's your best moment of the tournament?
I'm not as fan of that music, I'm afraid. As much as I was into my dance and trance back in the day, definitely not into that. I'm going to stick with footballing moments here, Rory. For me, it was beautiful to see Georgia conceal Portugal to a 2-0 defeat in that group stage game where they needed to win that. For me, the Romania game against Ukraine, where they condemned Ukraine to a 3-0 defeat. I think everyone was shocked at the nature of how they approached it. There wasn't a huge expectation on Romania. And also Turkey beating Austria 2-1. They weren't fancied and they managed to progress out of that last 32, didn't they, at the time? So yes, fantastic moments in this competition. But if we're talking funny moments, definitely Ronaldo having a hissy fit at basically blasting everything over in that Slovenia match, wasn't it? And Slovenia fans just cheering him every time he took on a free kick as well. So funny moment, Ronaldo and Slovenia fans. But in terms of moments, I'm going to go for Georgia winning 2-0, which will please our friend Luca from the Georgian Football Podcast as well.
My guy,
so
legend of the game. Incredible moment. Now, my favorite moment is Ronaldo. Just absolutely loved every second of it. I just while Lionel Messi picks up his third international trophy, and the country he ascends to God, and Ronaldo just has a complete fucking breakdown on the pitch and steers his whole team into a cliff. I really, really enjoyed that. It's like a Greek tragedy. It's incredible to watch. And Schadenfreude is my favorite emotion, so I really enjoyed that. But I think if I'm being semi-serious, just for the romance of it, Christian Eriksen scoring. I thought it was just a really beautiful moment, and it was just one of those moments where you're like, I fucking love football. I just really love football and what it does, and it's just so inspiring, his story. And like Denmark weren't the most exciting team, they weren't the most I don't think, but it was just a really beautiful moment. And I think for me that's got to be my moment of the tournament, I think. And Ronaldo's psychodrama, which I will be going back and watching. But guys, that is everything. Oh my god, Adam, we made it. We've done it, guys. Thank you for joining us through this Euro 2024. We did manage to get there in the end. We made it semi-consistent towards the end. It took us a while to warm up into the tournament, like England, but we got there. We made it. I just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. It means the world to us. We are now going to take a well-deserved holiday. I think this year has been so long. This season has been so long. We will be returning when the season returns. I think we've kind of said we're not really going to get involved in pre-season transfer windows, stuff like that. We're going to try and come back when the season starts so that we can have a bit of time off have a rest and that we're fully ready for next season, because
definitely
it's been a long run. It's been a long run. But Adam, as always, a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. More importantly, otherwise it'd be me ranting on my own in my bedroom like Mark Goldbridge, right? And nobody wants that. But yeah, anything to say before I send these people home?
Yeah, just a few thanks. During this tournament, thanks to Stevie Cole. We know him for his efforts, but just thank you for joining me on those live watch-alongs during this tournament. That's been really appreciated. Call out to Hibble James. I don't know if he listens to us, but he's a good advocate of the podcast. He likes us on social media. So just call out to him. There's a load of other guys that I probably failed to mention in terms of the social media side, in particular on Twitter and X. So just to say massive thank you. Thank you to the guests that we've had on our podcast at various stages. The previews that we've done for the Euros, really appreciated their company and just their acceptance of being part of this. Thank you to you, Rory. You got us through many moments as well. And just as a word to the listener, we are going to come back stronger than ever before for next season. We are going to be doing some planning, some interesting planning, to say the least. Hopefully you will appreciate it. We'll try not to extend this podcast any longer than it necessarily needs to be, but please keep an eye on our socials, follow us. We will kind of share the news as we go along, right, Rory? And we'll be back before you know it, because unfortunately we've got pre-season to deal with, and then before you know it, the season will kick off again.
Like that, the Mitchell and Webb meme, the football that never ends. Right? It will never end. But guys, we are officially ending. Thank you very much. You can hit the like and subscribe button down here if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening as a podcast, please always give us a like, subscribe, whatever you do on your podcast apps. Give us a rating. Yeah, leave a review, leave a comment. Tell me why Bukayo Saka shouldn't be in tournament of the team of the tournament. Got there in the end. And yeah, thank you. You can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram and TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. Follow us there. Keep an eye out on our socials. And more importantly, guys, enjoy your summer holidays. I'm off for an entire month. I can't wait. Ciao. A dopo.
Ciao, ciao.